All right, welcome family. I am so excited to be before you today. My name is Jenelle Haynes. I'm the proud owner of Just Be LLC, and in true Toastmaster fashion, we start on time and we end on time. And today we have some very special guests as a part of our podcast panel. We are here representing District 14. And as always, my guests on my podcast, my guests in any setting are extra special. And it is an absolute pleasure to introduce to you. I will start with ladies first because I'm in the South and that's how we do in the South. Let me start with Miss Victoria Green, who is a Georgia native. She attended a school in Michigan. She came back to be warm. So we're excited to have her back down here in the South with us. We also have Miss Jeannine K. Brown of Everyday Lead. Oh, and let me not forget Victoria's famous podcast, The Unfiltered. Let me get it right. The Girls Unfiltered. My apologies. The Girls Unfiltered. So we have Victoria Green with the Girls Unfiltered. Her business is officially called The Greens Unfiltered. And then we have none other than Miss Jeannine K. Brown of Everyday Lead. And that last, definitely not least, Mr. Rochet Wells of What Chetro Thinks About It. And so I don't want to take any more time away from these special guests. I want to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, tell more about their podcast and their name, and if they have any other special business names they want to share with us. So now I'm going to go backwards. Mr. Rochet Wells, please tell us the name of your podcast, what it's about briefly, and how you began.
Thank you very much. And thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. I'm going to have to make sure I put something extra in your envelope.
I
But
appreciate that.
I am the host of What Chetro Thinks About It. It is a single host podcast. It's basically stuff on my mind that forms into words and then actually comes out of my mouth. And I come up with some of my stuff when I was feeding the hungry back here in February of 2022. It means I was delivery driver or Uber Eats, however you want to say it. A lot of things was coming to my mind, and I said, you know what? Everybody needs to hear what Chetro thinks about stuff. And I was trying to think of names for the podcast and going through, and I put a little poll out there. One was Chetro Speaks or something like that, and everybody likes Chetro Speaks, and I overruled them because I like what Chetro thinks about it better. And been podcasting since February of 2022. I've been on a little hiatus till today and tried to upload an episode, and something changed with the platform. But I am back, baby.
We are glad that you are back, and we can't wait to hear what Chetro thinks. And I'm glad you went against the norm and didn't do what everybody thought you should do. That speaks volumes about the opportunities you have to share something different. So now I'm going to skip back over to Miss Jeannine K. Brown of Everyday Lead. Tell us about Everyday Lead and what happens in the process of your building UnToxic Boss is actually
Yeah.
the
So
correct
hi,
title.
I'm Jeannine Brown. Thanks, Jenelle, for having me here today. I'm really excited to be here to talk about podcasting. So I am the founder and CEO of Everyday Lead. We are a global consultancy. So we help companies retain talent who love what they do and the companies they work for. And we do that through professional development. But my podcast is called The UnToxic Boss. And that is a podcast that's kind of birthed out of the work we do in the consulting firm when helping companies create psychologically safe workplaces. So we say that we're trying to help create leaders worth following who are untoxic bosses. So we're giving tips and ideas so that you won't be a jerk at work.
And everyone wants to feel comfortable at work. I think the opportunity to come to work and be yourself is so important. And when you create those environments where it doesn't feel toxic, you absolutely have that chance. And so thank you for leading that charge. Next, we have Victoria Green. Back to you, my love. She is the Girls Unfiltered. Tell us more about that.
Hi, as Jenelle said, I am Victoria Green. I am the host of the Girls Unfiltered podcast, which is specifically focused on like 18 to 25, 18 to 35-ish range of women who are specifically looking at how to live life and live in faith at the same time. Like what that means. How do I transition from school to work to whatever have you and still walk in whatever God has for you, basically. And so that was the idea that I had. And then because my family has the Greens Unfiltered as a lifestyle brand, I was like, oh, I could just TGU this. Like, what else could I use with the letters TGU? And I was like, oh, the Girls Unfiltered. And I was like, okay, well, that's what we're gonna do. So that's where the name came from. It was just an offshoot of that idea. So yeah.
And I like the way you threw in the acronym. You TGU'd it.
I sure did.
You just introduced something new to me. I'm grateful. Now I'm able to connect with the younger generation. I appreciate you so much. So that's cool. I love that all of these podcasts came out of a need. It sounds like, Rochet, even though you said you are the funny guy, your thoughts came about while you were feeding the homeless. Could you tell us more about that moment? And, why did you feel it was important to continue, either doing that work and also spreading your word through the podcast?
I'm sorry, you may have misunderstood because my country accent. You have to realize I'm from the north. I live in Norcross, so I'm from the north part of Georgia. So my accent fools. I was out feeding the hungry. I was a delivery driver for Uber Eats.
I'm sorry.
Now I do divine deliverance of the people, which means I'm no longer delivering food. I'm delivering people, so that I can get paid. It was not because I was such a spiritual person, whatever, to feed the homeless, because I need to feed me first, because I'd be hungry and homeless too. But I had this ideal about podcasting about maybe, I guess over 13, 14 years ago. I was a guest on this guy. He had a blog talk radio show, and I was a guest on his show. And then when I moved to Georgia, I was very bored and just looked for something to do. And after like 10 years out here, I finally decided, I could do a podcasting platform. And I want to be a speaker, but a lot of times those speaking gigs aren't coming the way you want it to come. You're not getting where you want to get, or you're just too shy to go out there and try it yourself. So with podcasting, you actually control the platform yourself. That if you're not getting the gig you want, go speak. And with some of my podcasts, what I did is I'll take a speech I did in Toastmasters, turn it into an episode. I have to do a speech in Toastmasters, don't know what to write, took an episode of my podcast, turned it into a speech. And I also turned the whole process of how to start a podcast. I did that as a educational session for the District 14 Toastmasters Conference last year. It was a flop, but it gave a lot of people information. We had a few people that are actually going to start their podcast off of the flopped information I was able to give them.
Well, I was able to be in attendance, and I would say it was not a flop because you encouraged me to go ahead and pursue starting my podcast. Part of the reason that I was able to jumpstart was because I was there, and I would absolutely disagree that anything flopped in that moment. So whatever Shayro had on his mind that day worked for documenting dreams to go ahead and get started. So I'm grateful that you were able to jump in and present during that conference, because I was a recipient of all of that wonderful information.
Well,
and I would like to say part of the reason I'm here is because I was able to attend that particular session. So we talked about guests, or you brought up guests, and Jeannine, you have a topic that I would imagine choosing guests, maybe you have to be careful, or maybe you don't, or maybe it doesn't matter, because we are talking about creating a healthy work environment. Can you talk about what it means for you to go through the process, or what you think about when you're choosing guests to be on your show?
So one of the things that I look for in guests on my show are good communicators. I have to start there. And then I think the other thing is like knowledge and experience and real life experience around the topic that they come on the show to discuss. I really want our guests to provide our listeners with not only just the issues, but solutions. And so we definitely want to make sure that the guests don't spiral, because we know that what we're talking about can trigger some emotions that might be negative, or some trauma from past experiences people have that are toxic, that may have caused them to experience a significant amount of hurt, a job displacement. And we know that this topic in particular, and most recently we had a show that discussed, and we didn't go into it too much detail, but discussed a suicide and how toxic workplaces can lead to mental breakdowns that could ultimately lead to despair, which may lead to hopelessness, which leads to suicide. And we use the backdrop, unfortunately, of Dr. Claudia Gay at Lincoln University, what happened with her, and not to exploit her story, but really to shine a light on, y'all need to act right. Like, don't treat people so badly in the workplace where they feel this sense of hopelessness and despair that they'll take their lives. So we fortunately recently our guests have been both friends and colleagues who also specialize in some of the similar work that we're doing. So right now it's been really good. So no surprises. I know exactly what they're going to say. We have shared values in the work. And even if we have different points of view, we do it in a place that's psychologically safe, right? We don't take it personally. We share those views, and then we support people's point of view. But they definitely have to be, some real life experiences providing solutions to our listeners.
No, I love that. You're very intentional. And so the message, I'm sure, is clear to your guests. This is why we're here. And these are the things that are important for you to get from this particular episode. And I've been able to hear and listen. And I definitely know that you're intentional in that way, because there are people who can walk away and actually say, I can use this information that you give them real life tools, and the fact that they can connect it to real life situations. Sometimes we can speak about the things that we want to have happen, but actually hearing real life situations makes it more real and applicable, I think. And so I'm grateful for that message that you're sending. And we're talking about mental health in the workplace. I think we don't think about how just going to work and going through the rigmarole is really impacting our health, because you're meeting a need, right? And so as you're going to work and you're doing the everyday things and just kind of plugging away, and checking off boxes, you're still having an impact on your mental health. So I am grateful for your topic and your mission.
I appreciate you saying that. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. So that leads me to Victoria. Victoria, the Girls Unfiltered. So you spoke about women and young women in an age range. What is the message that you want those young ladies to get when they're listening to your show?
The main message was, well, first of all, a lot of people either around that age either start questioning their faith or start losing it or like walk away or whatever have you, just because it was the faith of their parents and they just were going to church because their parents were going to church. And it was like, okay, so what do I do now? I'm in college, or I moved out. I can do what I want to do when I want to do it. Or it was the idea of like, oh, I have these questions, but nobody's answering them in a way that like all my friends are doing this one thing, and I wanna kind of follow this faith that I started with, but I don't really know how to do it in the 21st century, in 2024 and 2023. So that's kind of what prompted it. And I just wanted to like show people that you don't have to have your whole life together in order to continue with this faith that you have. Like, it's a continual journey.
Yeah.
And so I have people on that are my age, which I'm 23. Sorry. I turned 24 this year, so it threw me off for a second. My age, younger, older than me, like people from all stages of life, just so that you get the idea of, yeah, this 66-year-old doesn't have her life together either. This 18-year-old, she knows more about life than I do. She's more secure in her faith than I do. But like, we're all still trying to figure out different facets of who we are and how we can like make friends and figure out like how to interact with bosses that we might not understand, or like do all those things and like integrate Jesus into our life, So
yes.
That's
I love it. Faith and forward. I appreciate that. And it's nice to hear you say that in your young age, because there definitely comes a time, especially when we're in college, where we might deviate from what we did when we were growing up, or feel like you don't need it, or that someone's praying for you and covering you. So, you're good. You're invincible.
Right. I'm okay. If they praying for me, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good. I definitely had those moments. And then, my friends and I would joke about, there was always that little rubber band that would just kind of pop us back to the reality, and what we knew and the grounding that we had, before we got there. So part of the reason we were able to snap back is because we knew, the foundation that we came from. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for, being bold enough to say, hey, y'all, we can still do this at any age, through our faith. And there's no need to be discouraged if you don't know what you want to do right now. So that's very important, because in my 40 years, I'm still trying to figure it out.
Exactly.
And I'm okay with it now. I'm okay with it now. So, but that's good. That's awesome. So we've all kind of talked about the purpose and the reason why we created this space or these podcasts. And there are also, opportunities for us to get something from it ourselves. So is there something, Rochet, I'll come back to you, other than you being hungry and knowing there are other people hungry? Was there something specific that in your creating the podcast and even airing them that you realized you got from it, or that you benefited from, that you maybe not thought about it, you hadn't thought about originally?
Well, the surprise thing that you are a Shayro baby is a real good surprise. Someone was listening. And I've always been the kind of person, I want to help somebody some kind of way. But I did not want to be tagged as a help podcast, because everybody's out there talking about their mental health. And my first episode was dealing about some things with mental health. And I had my son as a guest also, who's had a whole history of mental health issues. So as far as what I wanted to get out of the podcast, I just kind of felt like I need to encourage people. I classify myself as a motivational speaker, but I have to motivate myself sometimes. And again, sometimes this was a way to get the speeches I had in my head, just get them out there to the public to say, this is what it is. Plus, I was trying to promote my business, Shayro LLC, where I'm a motivational speaker, coach, and I try to work with people that are too scared to do interviews. And a lot of times it's not exactly what you know when you're interviewing for a job, but it's how confident you are. They already know you know what you're doing because they see your resume. You see you have a history, you've done what you've done. But a lot of times people they get in the interview and they just totally mess up, they freeze. And what the company I was with before, Comcast, we did this thing where we're trying to help people get to the next level. And it's not about if you're applying within Comcast or if you're applying for another company. You should be prepared for the interview process. This one lady sticks out. We got her in the room. We got ready to do the interview. We asked her question. Well, the question we asked was, what is your name? The lady jumped up out of the seat and ran away and cried. So we were like, wait, what? And we went and found her, and she's like, I just can't do this. We're like, wait, you've had to have gotten an interview before because you got the job you have now. And she's like, well, really, my cousin worked here. They told me to go see someone such and such, and they said you're hired on the spot. She had never really done a true interview.
Wow.
So we worked with her to get her to build up confidence in herself that she could at least make it through the interview and apply for that next job. One of my very first clients, we worked on the question of, tell us something about yourself. We worked on that question so much. She went into an interview. She was interviewing for an assistant principal. They asked her that question. She answered it. And after the interview, they told her, we decided after you answered the question, tell us something about yourself, that we were going to hire you because you are the only person that gave an actual real answer to that. So again, what I get out of this is I'm trying to help someone. I'm trying to inform someone. I'm trying to get someone else to take that step. And I'm so glad that you being a Shayro baby, you started your podcast off of my flawed presentation. My equipment didn't work that day. I'll say it like that. But I'm glad to know that I impressed someone. I know someone else is about to start their podcast, and I'm working with them. So that's what I get out of this.
Yeah, you didn't need the equipment for your message to resonate. It was there. So you did exactly what you were supposed to do. So I want to shift gears a little bit. There are people, like we know, want to start podcasts. There are all types of podcasts. And we know that sometimes there's some do's and don'ts, and maybe you learn them along the way. And so for those listening who might be inspired and want to go down this journey, or maybe they're trying to figure out ways to build their confidence in speaking publicly, what are some do's and don'ts? Anybody can jump in and share that either you've learned or you absolutely know that you should or should not do when it comes to podcasts or building your content.
I have one. So this is my second podcast. So the first podcast, I will say, I wish I had known Victoria when we were doing our Before 30 podcast. We would have loved to have you on the show to talk about how to be young and live for Christ. But I think one of the things that I realized before starting the Untoxic Boss, while we were doing Before 30, is to have an exit strategy. I think one of the things that we abruptly ended our show because it was me and I had two other co-hosts, and just because of time constraints, and we were all doing other things in addition to this show. And I think we did our listeners a disservice by not having a clear like exit strategy. We were getting texts like, when is the like, text and emails like, when is the next episode going to drop? And we had a really good following. And so I think really having an exit strategy so that you can provide your listeners who've been following us, and we had our podcast for 3 years following us, so we could leave them well. I feel like we just kind of dropped them, left them, and especially because the audience was young, and we had both young the audience that it was for, which were young adults before the age 30, but also we had a lot of parents of young adults that listened to the show, who got a lot of value from it because they were learning how to parent an adult, which is very different. And a lot of them were having challenges, and they were getting a lot of perspective from my two co-hosts, which were young adults as well. So I think having an exit strategy and knowing how you're going to leave your following, your audience, and if you can transition them into something else or create a different sort of community, because there are people out there that are listening to you, and they really value what they get from us as podcasters. And so I think that would be my first thing on the list. Start with the end in mind.
No, that's really good. That's excellent. Because like you said, you drop it and people kind of like, I was waiting for the next thing. You know? And I think to that point, building these type of communities is important, right? So if I'm not going to continue the message, then there's someone else I know who is. So let me share that information. So building those communities so you can, shout out or provide another resource that's going to carry on the message or add to your current message, I think is very powerful. So that's really good. Did you want to add one, Victoria? Do or don't?
I would say a don't, because I wanted to start my podcast actually 2 years ago, but I didn't start it until March of last year. And I'm going to be honest, it was because I overthought everything.
Yeah.
And then the first couple episodes weren't even good because I was like, well, I have to stop overthinking. I can't just not do this.
Yeah.
I know what I want to do and I know what I want to put out. So the first couple episodes, don't listen to them. But but I was finally like, no, I'm not going to overthink this. I'm just going to start and then I'll get better as I go.
Yeah.
So yeah, my don't is don't overthink it. Just do it and then you'll learn as you go.
That's really good. That's really good. I would totally agree
That's
with
what
that.
Nike said. Just do it.
Just do it. Agreed. I was in that same headspace, and going back to Rochet's presentation during Toastmasters, it was one of those moments where I was like, now or never. What am I waiting for? The perfect moment will never come. You don't want to strive for perfection, but you do want to strive for permanency, and that's the ability to sustain yourself and keep coming up with new ideas. And the only way that's going to happen is if you start. So you start where you are. And so I am grateful that every one of us said at some point, let's just do this thing and we'll see what happens. And you learn and you grow. I want to take a question from the audience. This question is coming from Monique Jones, and she asked, how often do you upload a show? Ooh, that's a tricky one for me. I have someone that I work with specifically who uploads the shows for me, and the time that it takes to upload them is a little bit intense, because I want to make sure that I'm listening. I'm careful about what I actually put out, because the part that I'm okay with overthinking is how I'm presented to the world. So for me, it probably takes about a week or so to go through and listen again and actually see the edits from my my producer. So for me, about a week. Does anybody else have a time frame?
I try to be weekly. And that's one thing you have, like you have someone doing your editing. I am a solo dolo production. So I'm doing everything. Editing, if I'm going to put on a 30-minute episode, that editing may take me an hour or two when I first started. Now I've learned a few tricks with editing. Like if I say something messed up, blah blah, I'll pause about 10 seconds, then say it over. So that way, when I go to editing, I just know delete this whole spot. I got it. I
Right.
started again. I try to do a weekly thing, but you want to be consistent because your listeners, as Jeannine said, they were out there and they were looking for the podcast, and they will be looking. I've listened to several other people's podcasts, and I will. What's the thing when you listen to everything all at one time, episodes or whatever? I'll do that, and then all of a sudden they dropped off, and I'm like, wait, where did they happen? But I would like to address one of the don'ts to not doing this in this thing. Don't take people's word of mouth. Put everything in writing, especially if you are doing with other guests. If it's more than you want it in writing. You want it to be stated whose podcast is this. And if the other person does not do what they are supposed to be doing, you have that in writing. Or if they walk away, are you still able to have this podcast? If you have guests, get a guest agreement form. If you are in production with someone else doing it, get all of that in writing as far as what they are supposed to do. Because a lot of people's podcasts, they're being held up because they did word of mouth stuff. So get it in writing. Google has all kind of docs for you. AI can create things for you. If you really need some help, I have a lot of the documents that you need. All you got to do is just change it over to your name.
Awesome. That was actually
I
going to
want
be
to
another
add
question.
to that. I think that is really important to audit. I don't have a contract, but I like that. I think automation is a big part of getting this work done, right? And then having someone else to support you while doing it. So if say you work and you're trying to do your podcast too, so you work full time and you're doing your podcast, I think if you can afford to make the investment in getting a virtual assistant, even if there's someone that is offshore. So we do have someone that does all of our editing. She does the editing, she does the guest intake, she manages all the things. And so, because I don't have the time or the talent or the desire
Oh,
to
that part.
do all of those things. And so I think it's really important. And you can get a VA for less than $10 an hour and manage their hours to do that work for you. She uploads the show, she writes the show notes, and the automation pieces, like even the intake, creating an online form, they upload their bios, their photos. I think that's a great part. And then using Chat GPT to help write your show summaries and your show notes. So I think there's a lot of things that podcasters can do now that they weren't able to do 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, to make the process go faster. And I think that consistency of uploading your show the same time every day, it has an RSS feed, people they're waiting on it. So that you have that level of consistency. And I think also for your guests, right? Your guests are expecting for their show to air. And then the last thing that Mr. Wells said that I thought was important, I think it's important to know the show, but I like to also share our footage and all our graphics with our guests so that there's no mistaking what they need to post, when they need to post it, sharing clips, they have reels, tagging us in those reels as well, so that we're getting that information out through multiple streams and platforms.
Absolutely. Yeah. The multiple streams and platforms is something that's been helpful because one of the things I learned, one of the first questions I would get is, so where are you streaming? And I couldn't wait to say on all platforms because by the time you try to list 2 or 3, you get lost. And then, so to Jeannine's point there, and I can't remember the application now, if it comes to you all, please share, but there's an application that will allow you to share it to all of the platforms, almost in one click. And so finding out, and this goes back to building community, right? Because then you have an opportunity to talk to people and see what sources they've used to be able to put their information out there, put it out there faster. You know, one of the things that for me that was, killed all the joy was editing. I edited one episode and I thought I was going to die. And, you know, you talk about faith. I just talked to one of my best friends from home. We hadn't talked in a long time. She was a communications major at that beautiful and illustrious University of North Carolina, Agricultural and Technical State University, Aggie, pride. Have to shout it out. She shared with me, she said, you know, Jenna, that's my passion. I said, well, here you go. Send it in an email, send it over, because it was literally killing the excitement for me when it came to creating the final piece of content. And when she said she could do it, she and I went in covenant with each other and decided that I got you. She's going to edit it for me. So she edits. She's my executive producer. Shout out to Organized Grind. She definitely holds me down and creates a great product for me. So I don't have to think about it. And I can still enjoy doing the thing that I like doing, which is talking to people, getting to tell people stories. And I don't believe I said at the beginning of the show the name of my podcast. It is called Documenting Dreams. If you know me, I get excited. So sometimes things skip my mind, but my podcast is absolutely called Documenting Dreams. And I am streaming on all platforms. I can say that I'm super excited about it. We'll be releasing season 2 very, very soon. Excuse me. And it will be released every Thursday at 12 noon. So as Jeannine said, I took some notes from others to have that consistency so people know when to expect it and know when it's coming. All right. So let's move on a little bit more. So there are people asking for a few more tips in the chat. So I want to get to that. Someone asked, how far out do you schedule your podcast? Oh, that's a good one. Anybody want to jump in?
We started recording the UnToxic Boss last year. Mm-hmm. So we had several episodes already in queue to use because I travel for work and some days I can't record. So let me back up. We actually record our show while doing it live on LinkedIn. So we do a live LinkedIn audio show. When I have a guest, I have to do a live LinkedIn video show because we get feedback trying to record, like that. When it's just me, I can record the show in our streaming device and go live on LinkedIn. When I have a guest, I can't. If anybody knows how to figure that out, let me know so that we don't get the feedback. So we do that. And so then the show airs on all streaming the platforms on the following Tuesday. But when there are days when I can't record on Fridays, because if I'm speaking somewhere or traveling or at the beach and I don't want to record, we have we got a bunch of shows that can drop. What we do is try to put our most recent content in and we use those other shows where it's just me to fill in. So I think it's important to have shows in the bank. I'll call it in the bank because you never know what's going on. Something could pull you away from the time that you need to record and you don't have shows. So I think it's important to do that, but you can always do a encore edition of your show. So we did start recording last year and then we dropped the UnToxic Boss aired and we did a big promo around it for January when it went live on all streaming devices.
Yeah, no, that's good. For sure. Let's see, we got a couple more questions. So Jeannine, I think this will be geared towards you and then also anybody else that might have dealt with sensitive topics. But because you address mental health in the workplace, do you ever issue a disclaimer or provide a hotline number for certain topics that you touch on? For example, suicide, as you mentioned earlier.
I'm glad that the person asked that question because that is something we actually talked about last week in our planning meeting. So we don't have a website for the UnToxic Boss yet and trying to decide, do we want to do that? Because that adds another level of work, but it also adds another level of SEO out there too, if we have a website and we're also posting our episodes. And so that is something that we did. So I am supposed to record an outro, an additional outro to talk about if you need support that you can get a therapist. So, but we don't. And one of the things, I have so many friends who are therapists. And so I am looking for a way to create a partnership with them and we can refer people to either a therapist or to an 800 hotline. So the question is so timely. It is definitely something that came up because we get a lot of DMs about this is great. And we also post a lot of social media, particularly on TikTok and Instagram. We do a lot of reels from the show. And when I first started doing this, I knew it was a challenge and it was an issue because it's something that I travel around the country and speak about and the work we do at our companies. But I was probably under prepared for the number of people who openly share their experiences with toxic behaviors, leaders, and workplaces, like openly on our Instagram page and TikTok or in my DMs. I mean, it kind of, I will say I might have been a little naive thinking I knew a lot, but I was blown away. And it's in every industry, at every level, every gender, every race. I mean, it does not the impact of toxicity in the workplace does not discriminate. It just doesn't.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. So it made me think about, we're all talking about things that we have done or things that, you know, their do's and don'ts and things that have kind of evolved from this experience. I know for me, I didn't even realize that I was going to come into things, but as I started talking to people, which this came up in the chat as well about themes. So for me, the first season was about telling stories of people that were close to me, people that I knew, right? And then I continued to want to tell more stories. That's pretty much the purpose of Documenting Dreams. I'm sharing the dreams of those people that I know, or maybe a person that's a person away from someone that I know, but I feel like they have a great story and it needs to be told. Well, then lo and behold, the next season, I started writing out the guests that I wanted, and they were all very extremely powerful and thoughtful African-American women. And so then the next thing was like, well, I highlighted my women. I absolutely have to highlight the stories of my Black men. So then came the next theme. So it started to evolve just out of me simply starting to write and think about those things that were important to me. I had to also get comfortable with the idea that I really, truly, honestly wanted to tell the stories of my people. And I wanted to be able to cross certain audiences, but then I also thought, well, I can telling my own stories, telling the stories of Black and brown people, because that's what's important to me. And I think when we start to create and decide what content we want to share, you talk about the confidence, be okay with that topic, and then be confident that it's going to be what it's going to be. There's some people who will and who won't care for it, but it doesn't matter as long as you are presenting the message that you want to present forward. So I'm just curious whether or not any of those thoughts or feelings, you know, were true for, you know, Victoria, if you want to share as you were sharing your content, because, you know, sometimes talking about religion or faith can be something that people can shy away from. Do you feel like there was an evolution in your topics?
Yeah, so in the beginning, because I was just trying to figure out what I was trying to do, I kind of just asked more generic questions like, how did you make your faith your own? And like, not your parents' faith and stuff like that. But as I did more episodes, and I actually got a mentor as well, who's helped me develop what season 2 is going to be, because season 2 comes out on Monday, this upcoming Monday. Um, it was the idea of like, okay, so this season can specifically focus on work being worship, and what does that mean? Because everybody uses that phrase, but what does that actually mean in real life? And the idea of like, there were a lot of topics that I wrote prior to even starting the show, years ago, that I really was interested in as like a high schooler and a college student. I was like, okay, well, I know people who are interested in these topics still. How do I incorporate that and talk to people who could potentially like make this into a whole season? So that's kind of how I went from like no theme, just like trying to figure out my life, to now season 2 is going to be specifically like, oh, this is the theme. These are like the 10 episodes or however many episodes that are specifically focused on this, and like gearing the the guests that I have around that theme. So yeah.
That's cool. I want to go back to Rochet because he mentioned, you know, being hungry, not homeless, or feeding the homeless. And you talked about a source of income. Can you touch on how we can turn a podcast into a source of income, and how have you been able to do that successfully?
How have I been able to do that successfully? I haven't, because I haven't really taken on sponsors. But here's the thing. I believe everybody on this panel has a business, LLC, as well as a lot of people in the audience. the best way to get customers is to advertise. So you can, everybody has a friend that has a business that has a friend that has a business, and most of them are legit. You can sell ad spots on your podcast. And that's one of the things I told you I was having problems earlier with Anchor because I could upload segments, and between those segments, I could run a commercial. Most of the time, I'm running from my money grabber, which is buymeacoffee.com. Buymeacoffee.com/Chetro, Chetro. Shameless plug there. But that's a good way people can donate money to your podcast as well. If say you don't have a product to sell, they can donate money. Get merchandise. There are a lot of sites out there, Printful, as well as a lot of the places that may do sublimation, and they can do shirts about your podcast or whatever your theme is per se. If you have a something, so sell merchandise, selling ad spots, getting sponsors, getting people to donate to your podcast are ways you can actually make money with your podcast. Because as you say, that you can spend a lot of money to get started, or you can spend a little money. But as this becomes more and more than your hobby, this kind of becomes your job.
Mm-hmm.
And if one of the reasons I went on a hiatus is because I was out there trying to make more money by doing the divine deliverance of the people. But if the podcast was bringing me in money, if I had been out there selling myself more so, I would have relied on the podcast to provide that extra income for me.
Gotcha. No, that's great advice. That's great advice. So go.
Let me throw
Go
this in.
Yeah.
If you have a podcast, it's not required, but get an LLC to actually own the podcast because one, you could get sued, so let that get sued. But buy all your equipment, do everything you do it under your LLC. Talk with your accountant about how that goes with filing your taxes and things like that. But everything I have, I try to get it under the name of Chetro LLC and not under the name of Rochet.
Well, and I noticed that Jeannine, you dropped in the chat business structure. As far as business structure, we are S corp. Can you talk about what an S corp is? Or why that's important?
I could, but I don't. You know my background.
Oh, well, first.
Yeah. So I would say to talk to your accountant. And a lot of times you can take the S selection based on the amount of income that your business is earning. So, so yeah, it's an election that you take that actually is more, it gives you more tax advantages of if your income, if you pay yourself, if it's taxable. But I think it's best for you to, that's for your next show when you have tax professionals on here. And I got a bunch of them I can refer to you.
We are. Yeah, next episode. But yes, thank you so much for sharing all that information. So again, Toastmasters, let me just shout out Toastmasters for being a segue and a wonderful and safe space to build those skills that Rochet is talking about. He and I were members of Toastmasters in District 14, as well as Jennifer. And I have to shout out my club, Eagle 7 Early Risers. Thank you so much for backing all the ideas and thoughts that have come out of come out of my podcast. I do have an LLC. It's called Just Be LLC. BE stands for Boldly Educate. I am an educator first, not a teacher. I am an educator. I give hands-on learning experiences because I believe the best way for you to learn is to actually dig deep, touch it, feel it, taste it, smell it, in order for you to walk away with a great experience. So the BE is for Boldly Educating. Is there anybody else that wants to share their LLC for those who missed it at the beginning? Victoria?
Well, we started an LLC called the Greens Unfiltered. It's basically a lifestyle stationery sort of business, I guess you could say.
Okay.
We're coming out with like prayer journals as well as devotionals. Those are, some of them are available now, but those are generally coming out once a month. So yeah, I don't know.
Nope, that's good. That's awesome. Rochet, can you tell us the name of your LLC again as well?
Yes. My LLC is Chetro LLC. Chetro is Rochet backwards for those of you that haven't figured it out. It's basically where I am a motivational speaker, coach. I'm a paid friend, And most recently, I am now a published ebook author, and I'm trying to copy and paste it and put it into the chat. That wonderful program that failed at Toastmasters, I've now turned it into an ebook about how you can start your podcast in less than 30 days. And shout out to Rooted to Living, or Monique Jones per se, that put the fire under me to do this. I'm trying to get it to where I can put it in the chat there, but you can purchase that as well
Awesome.
if we're allowed to
To
give that
shout
kind
out
of
your
shameless
business?
plug.
Oh,
Oh,
yes,
I was
absolutely.
gonna put where you can scan. You can actually see the book, How to Create a Podcast in Less than 30 Days. I
Yes,
put it in the chat.
please, absolutely. That's why we're here. Jeannine, everyday lead.
Our primary company is Everyday Lead. And so you can find us at www.everydaylead.com. So if you're looking for any work around high performing teams, individual or group coaching for yourself or for your company that you work for, organizations and schools, you can find us there. One of the things that we didn't talk about when we talk about LLCs, I want to just throw this last thing in there. If you have a unique name and you want to own it and keep it, consider trademarking your podcast name. So we're in the process of getting the UnToxic Boss trademark, and it's going to take a really long time because the trademark office is actually working on applications that were filed last year in Q2. So it takes a minute, but you definitely want to try to own it if you can, if it's something unique and different. So I would consider that and go into the trademark website to see if anybody already has it. Because if someone has your name and they've gotten a trademark, and say someone has trademarked the UnToxic Boss, let's just say that has happened, they can actually send a cease and desist letter to you through their attorney and stop you from using that name. And any branding, anything that you poured into that work could either be asked to be taken down, or you can no longer use it. So I think that, yeah, so that's pretty important.
Yes, absolutely. You don't want to do all that hard work for somebody to tell you, be quiet.
Right.
That's what
Or
you
sue
definitely
you,
don't. Or
right?
sue you, yes.
Sue you,
Really make you be quiet.
Yes.
So I have to do something that's a part of my show. I want to share here on this platform because it's my absolute favorite part of my show. Is something that I like to do and get everybody kind of on their toes and just thinking maybe inside, outside of the box, whichever one you choose. But this part of my show is actually called Finish These Statements. If you ever listen to an episode, you get to hear my guests finish some random statements. So I am going to ask my guests on here, if you would unmute, and I'm going to say a statement and then you're going to fill in the blank. All right. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The first statement. My favorite song is.
Good.
Hallelujah now.
Hallelujah. Who said?
The
You
song
said
I
good,
always
good?
go with.
Okay.
Good, Usher.
You know, I got stumped on my other show when before. I don't know why. And it's funny because I thought about like my favorite song the other day, and I was like, I'm gonna never forget that. Like I'm gonna remember that that's my favorite song.
Exactly.
Hilarious. Did you get a favorite song from anybody? Hallelujah.
Oh, the song I normally go with is "She's a Bad Mama Jamma," Carl Carlton.
Oh yes.
But I also really like "Love's in Need of Love Today," Stevie Wonder.
Oh, that's a good one.
Those are my two that I go with all the time.
Okay.
She's 20 years old, but she was born in the 70s.
Look, my parents are musicians.
Great exposure. Great exposure.
She picked some good ones.
Awesome. All right. I get really nervous when
someone asks me what my favorite song is.
Yes.
The question was, I get really nervous what now?
I get really nervous when
I'm in front of people.
Same.
I'm a very shy person.
I don't believe that, Rochet, but okay. All right. People think I am, but I am really.
People think I'm an extreme extrovert, but I'm really lean more toward being an introvert.
That would be my answer.
Same for you, Victoria?
Yeah, but I'm gonna change it up just because everybody else said that.
Okay, I like it.
Yes. People think that I'm like a stickler for the rules, but I'm like the most laid back person you could get. Like, unless I really feel passionately about something, I'm like, you can do whatever. I'm cool. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's see. I know all the lines too.
Love Jones.
Ooh.
I don't even know the lines to my own podcast. I have to write it all out.
No favorite movie, no favorite song, no
There
favorite
are, but
episode
my
of any
memory's about as
show.
long as the hair on my head right now, and I need a haircut.
Almost any Justin Bieber song.
Who?
Justin Bieber.
Who's
Yeah.
that?
Or She's a Bad Mama Jam. I know all the words to that
He's a
too.
bad memory.
I love
Yeah.
Anita
Appropriately so.
Love.
Yeah.
Appropriately so. All right, my why is
My son.
It's a good one. I think my why goes back to my childhood, and my why is tied to the legacy that I think my grandparents started for my family, my maternal grandparents. Yeah.
you living out that legacy now, or are you still
I
working
think,
towards that?
I think I'm living it. I think me and even my brothers, I think we are, I think it's so subconscious for us. So yeah, I think that's it.
That's
I
beautiful.
think people need to know that they're not alone and that they have people on whatever journey they're on.
Ooh.
And because when people feel alone, then they start doing things that lonely people do. And that could lead to thoughts that we don't need to have, you know?
Mm.
So
Mm.
that's my why, is basically just like, I want people to know that there are other people out there, either like them or rooting for them or championing them. Wow, that's a hard word for me to say. No matter what. So
No,
yeah,
that's
my why.
good. That's good, Victoria. All right. When I hear blank, I'm running to the dance floor. We know yours, Victoria. Bad Mama Jamma.
Of course. Of course.
I can't dance.
That don't mean you can't run to the dance floor.
I'm not embarrassing myself.
You don't have a hot two-step.
When I hear almost anything, I enjoy dancing. Don't get to do it enough. So anything, almost anything. I will right now I'm dancing to Beyonce's new country album.
Oh my goodness. I just heard that song the other day. I saw
Bring
a
Country
post.
Back Black.
Yes. I was like, is this for real?
Darius Rucker.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's pretty good. All right, last one. And I don't want you to jump in. I'm going to intentionally go around and ask you to fill in this blank. Victoria, I am
progressing.
That's good. Mr. Wells.
I am something I don't even know right now at the moment. My mind totally went blank. But you know what? I am confident in myself.
That's good. Jeannine, I am
healthy, wealthy, loved, and settled.
That's good. I like it. All right. I am super excited because this is District 14's podcast panel. And my wonderful guests, Miss Victoria Green, Rochet Wells, and Jeannine K. Brown have just brought my heart all the great joy for being here with us and sharing with this audience and answering questions and just giving your thoughts and ideas about podcasting. And I think the most important thing to me, and I say this to my kids all the time, is the power of voice. We have 4 voices on here who who have come to share different ideas and different thoughts and have something to give to all communities. I think we all are able to touch on a different community with our podcast. And I hope that our listeners have had an opportunity to be inspired and learn maybe how you can start a podcast, how you can inspire others by using your voice. If you have an opportunity and you want to connect with one of us on here, by all means, you can, for me, you can go to my email address or you can go to my IG. My IG is Documented Dreams Podcast. I'm on YouTube, all platforms. You can email me at justbe.j5@gmail.com to reach out. Victoria, could you shout out your IG for us?
Yeah, the Girls Unfiltered podcast or the Greens Unfiltered, just that. Those are the Instagrams that I use the most. You could also email me at greenvictoriad@gmail.com because I look at my email 10 times a day. So, I'm trying to think what else. Those are the main two. Yeah.
Okay. Rochet?
Yes. So my email address, Chetro Speaks, Chetro Speaks @gmail.com. I have two Instagrams. One is what Chetro Thinks About It _podcast. There's no I in thinks when you look me up, or if you just type in Chetro. My other Instagram is Chetro LLC or Chetro _LLC on Instagram. I don't really use Twitter that much, but if you reach out to one of those, you'll find me. And I also accept smoke signals. If you're able to do a smoke signal, I can respond that way as well.
Jeannine, where can we find you, reach out to you, and connect with you?
You can find me on all social media platforms at Jeannine K. Brown.
Awesome. I want to do something really quickly. Is there a bold or brave guest who would like to take one of my random questions and fill in the blank?
Victoria, I'm gonna nominate Victoria to do it. You said you were taking nominations, right?
Yeah, nomination.
I'm cool with it. I'll do it.
You're cool with it? Let's see. All right. Since you're a 70s baby, born in the late 2000s.
I was born in the year 2000. Year zero.
Early 2000s. Can't stop, won't stop.
Can't stop, won't stop. You want me to say something after that? I
You
can't stop,
fill in the
won't stop?
blank. Can't stop. What is it that you can't stop and you won't stop?
Can't stop, won't stop eating bread. Now, I know that my metabolism is high right now. I know that it will slow down. My doctor has already warned me. I don't care.
I'm with you. They can't snatch all the joy, can they?
That's right.
Can I just enjoy my bread, my pasta, my
Great.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
Absolutely. I would be remiss if I didn't thank my special tech master, Miss Jennifer Green, who helped curate this moment for us. I want to give her a special shout out and thank her so much for helping us get this podcast together and organizing the guests and just giving us a place to speak and talk and share the gifts that we have been cultivating and curating for however many months, years, and allowing us to just be ourselves here on this podcast. That's the beautiful thing. I know I keep shouting out Toastmasters, but Toastmasters is a gift, everyone. I just want you to know it's a place where you can truly come and safely be you and build on your speaking skills, your confidence, use the power of voice, and meet some wonderful people. The wonderful other great thing about it is, not to repeat wonderful, is that you can do it virtually, and there are people that meet in person, and there are organizations and chapters all over. I actually was blessed to be a part of a group, and we chartered a chapter, and we've been virtual for almost 3 or 4 years now. So I just want to say that, use Toastmasters as an opportunity to meet wonderful people like the individuals on this screen today. Jennifer has been super supportive in bringing me into the PR world, something I would have never thought about. And so I think it's important to highlight what Toastmasters does and the people that you get to be introduced to. So thank you so much for having us. Thank you again, Jeannine, Victoria, and Rochet. And again to District 14. And Jen, shout out to Jen Green for holding me down today. I appreciate everyone. Thank you so much for being here. You all have a phenomenal week. Go be great and be blessed. Thank you so much, everyone.
Janelle,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Bye.